YouTube as well. We're going to be talking today about 3 things that the Talmud loves about the Iranians. We're also going to be talking about 3 things that the Talmud loves about another nation that used to live in that area of the world, the Medes. Not sure if you ever heard of the Medes, but just to give you a little context, the Medes were the nation of Achashverosh, the Purim story. He was the king of Persia and of Media. I think today Media would be more related to the media, the news media. But Media was actually an ancient country. The Medes actually conquered the Babylonians, subsequently conquered by the Persians. So let's take a look at this idea in today's 20 minutes of Talmud. We're learning it in the Talmud on Wednesday mornings. This is the book, the Ein Yaakov, the Eye of Jacob, a 15th century work that distills the stories of the Talmud together in a way that separates the legal fine print of the Talmud, the legal code, and leaves us with what's geschmack, what's sweet, what's beautiful, what's inspiring. And as the Alter Rebbe says, that the study of Ein Yaakov inspires us to good character traits and leads us towards Gan Eden, the Garden of Eden. Good morning, Marty and Ed, with us here on Facebook. Good morning, Michelle, on YouTube, and anyone else that's with us live or later. These are the ones that I can see, even though I see the other viewers as well, but I don't know who they are. Okay, so here we are. We're on page 139 for those of you that have the book. If you don't have the book, then just follow along with me. 139 in the first volume of Talmud, Brachot A, in the series of Ein Yaakov. Last week we learned about the Rava who instructed his sons not to cut meat while holding their hands. The Gemara cites a brisa, a source for this. The brisa taught, Rabbi Akiva said, there are 3 things that I like about the Medes. The Medes were the people of the country of Media, a country mentioned many times in the story of Esther. Hi, Hannah Siegelstein and Andy and Stephanie Marmer. Good morning. What are the 3 things that Rabbi Akiva likes about the Medes? When they cut meat, they cut it only on a table and not whilst holding it in their hands. We learned this same idea last week, which is the flow, the continuity here in the Talmud. So first of all, never cut meat while it's being held in your hand. Hold it while you have it resting on a table. When they kiss a friend, the second thing that Rabbi Akiva loves about the Medes, when they kiss a friend, they kiss only on the hand. Isn't that interesting? They kiss only on the hand and not on the mouth. This is more dignified since a kiss can leave traces of saliva. I think in our hypersensitive society today of social distancing, we would certainly appreciate what the Talmud is saying over here. And this is obviously not in a time of a pandemic. Elsewhere, the Talmud tells us during a time of a pandemic, get out of town. That's what the Talmud says. If there's a pandemic going on, get out of town. And the Talmud also tells us to stay upwind and not downwind. Don't be downwind, which means the wind is blowing at you because you're more likely to receive the pandemic than if you're upwind when the wind is blowing away from you. The wind is blowing away from you, yeah. So what's interesting is that the Talmud was well aware of the idea of germs 2,000 years before science was. Germs being something invisible. It was in the 1800s when a Jewish Hungarian professor, doctor, by the name of Semmelweis, spoke publicly about the fact that the doctors were killing their patients, particularly mothers in childbirth. They were killing their patients because they weren't washing their hands. And he died a miserable death. I spoke about him a few weeks ago. I think it was on Rosh Hashanah I spoke about him, where he was ridiculed for this ridiculous notion of saying that it was the doctors themselves that were killing the patients. When in reality, the Talmud seems to know this 2,000 years ago, that it's the hidden saliva, it's the hidden wind, which is the carrier of disease. So let's take a look at this idea a little bit deeper. So Rashi says the reason you shouldn't kiss on the mouth, but rather on the hand, is because a kiss can leave traces of saliva, which I understand to mean carrier of disease. Alternatively, kissing in the mouth, this is now the Maharshot's commentary, kissing in the mouth is a form of intimacy that is appropriate only between husband and wife and not appropriate between friends. You shouldn't kiss your friends on the mouth. It's not even appropriate. And a third thing that Rabbi Kiva likes about the Medes is when they consult, before we get to the Iranians are coming up in a moment. Stay with me, the Iranians are coming up in a moment. And when they consult each other in private matters, they consult each other only in the field and not in a house where someone might overhear them. This is amazing. These guys knew about Big Brother long before Big Brother knew about Big Brother. They were worried about surveillance. They were worried about satellites and who knows what else they were worried about being heard. If they wanted to speak about something privately, they would do so in an open field and not in a house where somebody might be hiding. In a house, you can never be sure that no one else is listening on the other side of the wall. As the saying goes, the walls have ears. That is Rashi. By saying that he likes these things about the Medes, Rabbi Kiva seems to be teaching us that we too should act this way. And he's teaching that while it is usually forbidden to imitate the ways of idolaters, as the verse says, you shall not follow their practices in Leviticus, this does not apply when their practice is based on good sense or on modesty. Rob is asking a question. Good morning, Elaine. Rob is asking a question. Does this mean that a man can kiss a woman's hand? Because why would a man kiss a man? Why would a man kiss a man? Well, I can tell you, Rob, that in the Hasidic circles, men kiss men. We don't kiss them on the lips, but we kiss them on the cheeks. We kiss them on the beard. It's like a standard greeting. When a Chassid meets another fellow Chassid, we hug. I mean, not during Corona. I haven't hugged anybody for I don't know how long, but we hug and we kiss each other like on the cheek or something. I don't know. Is that very strange in your circles, Rob? I mean, men don't kiss men. I think that in the Middle East, it's very common. Very, very common in the Middle East. When people greet each other, men and men, they kiss on each cheek, the left and right and left and right. They do different customs depending what country you're coming from. But I think it's very common. Maybe just in America, it's not. But I'm pretty sure that in the Middle East, I know that in the Middle East, that's how they greet each other. There you go. Marty corroborates my position here. European custom is to kiss each other on the cheek. So what he was saying was that the European custom is obviously coming from the Medes, that the Medes wouldn't kiss each other on the lips. They would kiss each other on the cheek, on the hands. Interesting, on the hands. And the kiss on the cheek is normal practice in Middle East and France and Spain. There you go. Thank you for your support. But Rob, who is all American, has never seen this before. You won't shake a woman's hand, says Rob, but you'll kiss a man. Yeah, I'll kiss a man, but I won't shake a woman's hand. Why? Because there's no sexual innuendo in kissing a man. But when it comes to a woman, you got to be sensitive to the fact that a woman is naturally attractive, naturally exciting. You're not attracted to a man. Unless maybe you're gay. But if you're straight, then you're not attracted to a man. There's nothing wrong with kissing a man. It's a woman that you got to be careful of because you got to set boundaries. Like it says in the Mishnah, you got to set boundaries because once you set boundaries, you won't cross them. In our culture today. It's perfectly acceptable for men and women, unrelated to each other, to kiss, to hug, I had a woman in the community that was complaining to me that there's another much younger woman in the community that sits on her husband's lap and she doesn't like it at all. She's like, this is my husband. This woman is much younger. She sits on his lap. I don't like it. And I said, I agree. I think it's wrong. I don't think it's right. Let's see. Rob says, for me, obviously. Plus, the man doesn't menstruate. What's it going to do with menstruation, Corey? I'm not sure where menstruation fits into this picture. Menstruation is very private. It's got nothing to do with anybody else. I don't know, Corey, where you're coming from, what you mean by that. Why is this not consistent, Rob? Tell me. Why is it not consistent? It's all about sexual protections, which means you're supposed to save your sexuality, your intimacy for the person that you married, and not for anybody else. Good morning, Dean. You came in the middle of a fist fight over here. So you're supposed to save your sexuality, your intimacy for the person that you're committed to, and not for anybody else. In fact, with under the chuppah, when the bride goes around the groom, she's building a wall around the groom. She's like, it's just us. There's nobody else in here. There's no 3, there's no 4, there's no 8 people. It's just me and you. There's nobody else. Corey, I understand that nida is when a woman menstruates, but what's that got to do with kissing another man? Like, why shouldn't she be able to kiss another man? I mean, theoretically, if she's menstruating. The only reason a woman can't touch another man is when it's her own husband. Her own husband, who is normally permissible to her, cannot touch her while she's menstruating. But that's got nothing to do with other men, Corey. It's not like she's got a blanket prohibition to touch any man while she's menstruating. I don't think that's a problem. But is shaking a woman's hand isn't sexual intimate? Okay, so Marty, this is where I disagree with you. Marty. Touching a woman's hand is sexual. And I know that you think that sounds ridiculous. And I respect you for that. And I'll explain to you why. If you live in a culture where men and women touch all the time, then it becomes a non-sexual thing. But if you live in a culture like mine, where men and women don't touch each other, then a mere brush of a finger is extremely sexual. It's extremely arousing. Is that the kind of sensitivity you want or don't want? Well, Rob, before I get to you, Rob, when you are able to nurture a sensitivity, it's like electricity. Electricity is very, very powerful. So what do we do with electricity? We protect it. We coat it, and we say we don't just allow this electricity to go anywhere. We guide it very, very very, very specifically. So too with sexuality, it's like electricity. You want to guide it very, very carefully. Focus it only on the person that you are intimate with, and nobody else. That's it. So when I kiss another man, it's completely a non-sexual act. But when it comes to a woman, we have to be cognizant of the fact that there's a natural sexuality between men and women, and therefore you have to build a border. And if I'm going to go around kissing any woman, that's going to lead to inappropriate thoughts and possibly inappropriate behaviors. Again, Corey, I'm not sure. I'm only getting half sentences from you, so I'm already understanding where you're going, Corey. And Rob, I don't think it's all or nothing. You say either kiss everyone or kiss no one. I disagree. Maybe you should touch no one. I disagree with you, Rob. It's not either kiss everyone or kiss no one. No, you're intimate only with one person, with your husband or your wife. That's it. Intimacy is for one person. And in other words, sexuality is reserved for one person. And that's where I agree with you. And you're not sexual with anybody else. So when it comes to a man that I'm not attracted to, no problem. When it comes to a woman that I am attracted to, I won't touch her. I won't even touch her. I won't even shake her hand. Stephanie, we need to accept each other's boundaries. Thank you, Stephanie. I agree. Rob, do you believe there's no homosexuality in the Hasidic community? If so, then don't kiss anyone. Now, that's a very interesting point there, Rob. Very interesting. There certainly is homosexuality in any Jewish community, in any community, in any humanity. And it's an interesting question. I was actually talking to somebody about this the other day, about that point. Look, it's an interesting discussion. I think it's beyond the pale of this one. But I do want to say, yes, there certainly is an issue of homosexuality. And if you feel that someone is kissing you in a way that is completely beyond the accepted pale, and that would mean a few seconds. If somebody holds your hand for more than a few seconds or rubs it a certain kind of way, or you'll know already, and you'll feel very uncomfortable. It's actually happened to me once. One time somebody did that to me. I never got near that person ever again. And I think that's kind of where you draw the line. Marty, then your culture enhances sexuality in a typically non-sexual behavior. Then your culture enhances sexuality in a typically non-sexual behavior in my culture. Exactly, Marty. Agreed. And that is because our sexuality is more alive. Our sexuality is more alive. When you don't touch another woman ever, then any touch from your wife is going to be out of this world. Would you rather be more sexually alive or more sexually dead? I'll leave that rhetorical question with you. I see on YouTube as Michelle saying men and women have different immunities as well. I think that was referring to an earlier comment there, Michelle, about something to do with the saliva on the hand, maybe. I don't know. Hopefully you don't kiss her with a wet kiss on the hand, by the way. But I'm not sure exactly what you're referring to, but anyways, I think that I'll leave it at that. That you want to keep your sexuality sensitive, But if your sexuality is such that you've touched every woman, you've kissed every woman, I had a group of teenagers that told me once that they share sleeping bags when they go camping. And I explained to them what a tragedy that is. If you've literally slept together with every kid in your class, then, what are you reserving? What is sacred? What are you leaving behind for, for the sacred space, the sexuality of your spouse? What's left? And yes, Marty, therefore I say, proudly so, our culture enhances sexuality because remember, sexuality is a mitzvah, don't get me wrong. It's nothing to be embarrassed of. It's not something to be ashamed of. Sexuality is holy. But if you trivialize sexuality by saying, oh, it's no big deal, I can dress however provocatively I want, and I can speak however provocatively I want to anyone and touch, then what is left of your sexuality? We're not looking to drown our sexuality as other religious communities might be trying to do. We are looking to enhance our sexuality. In fact, I was reading just last night. I'm going to read you this quote. I'm going to find it quickly. I'm going to find it now. Oops. Where was it? I'm going to find for you a beautiful quote. Hold on. Find for you a beautiful quote. 1 second. I'm going to pull it up here. Bear with me. I was reading it just early this morning, actually, it was. No, not this. Here it is. Okay, here it is. It speaks about the creation of Adam and Eve, which is obviously next week's Torah portion. God created husband and wife from the dust. This is a Talmud Sanhedrin with the Rashi on the Sanhedrin. God created husband and wife from the dust, breathed into them of his own spirit, and then commanded them to become one flesh through the pleasure of sex. One more time. God fashioned husband and wife from the dust, breathed into them of his own spirit, and then commanded them to become one flesh through the pleasure of sex. Sanhedrin 58b with the Rashi commentary on it. Sex is holy. And if you're experiencing a sexual experience with any woman that you come across, even if it's a limited sexual experience, then you're minimizing from the sexuality of your spouse. And I'll leave it at that. All right, so Rav Ada bar Rava said, we continue before we get to the three things about the Iranians. Rav Ada bar Rava said, what is the verse that shows that private matters should be discussed only in the field? For it says, Jacob needed to talk to his two wives. Jacob sent and summoned Rachel and Leah to the field, to his flock. When he needed to speak to them privately, he did it in the field. The Gemara, he obviously didn't want his father-in-law to hear about his plans. The Gemara cites a similar brisa in which a Tana praises certain behaviors of another non-Jewish nation, the Iranians. What can we learn from the Iranians? The brisa taught. Rabban Gamliel says there are three things I like about the Persians. The Persians are the Iranians. They are modest in how they eat. What does it mean they're modest in how they eat? By the way, Rob, the Bible is filled with multiple partners and wives. That's fine. Polygamy is fine. It's permissible according to the letter of the law. Polygamy is okay. You can practice sexuality with all of your wives as long as they are your wives. Multiple partners and wives is fine. Whether they're concubines or wives is fine. But if they're not, then it's not okay. So Rob, as long as you're okay with marrying more than one wife, that's okay. But to just randomly have these semi-sexual encounters with every female that you come across is not appropriate. A very controversial topic here, like the good old days here. Okay, good. So the first thing that they liked about the Iranians, Rabban Gamliel liked about them, was that they are modest in how they eat. What does that mean? They eat in private, where other people cannot see them. Good morning, Dan. Nice to see you. The Gemara in Kedushin says that someone who eats in the street is acting like a shameless dog. Yeah, watch out, Rob. Someone who eats in the street, says the Talmud, is eating like a shameless dog. It's not considered respectful. In fact, one of the disqualifications of witnesses, for someone to be considered a kosher witness, there are certain ramifications of age and different things. If someone is so shameless as to eat out in public, like, in Disney World, they eat and walk and they're like just walking and eating, that's considered disrespectful and undignified and disqualifying them from the status of kosher witnesses. So the first thing we like about the Iranians is that they eat in private, modestly. Number two, they're modest in the restroom. What does that mean? They do not uncover themselves in the restroom more than necessary, and they do not talk while they're in the restroom. The Gemara later notes that the Persian restrooms were particularly sanitary by the standards of their time, in that they were made in a way that the waste immediately rolled away in a nearby pit, and and the waste did not remain in the restroom itself. Now that's fascinating. That's like the origin of the toilet. They flushed and it went away. It was great. So it looks like the Iranians were, according to the Talmud, the inventors of sanitary hygiene in getting rid of human waste in the bathroom, and they somehow managed to flush it out. How nice. And the third thing about the Iranians, and that they are modest in another matter. That's what the Talmud says. They're modest in another matter. Has anybody got any idea what another matter is? What could the Talmud be referring to? Modest in another matter is, in the footnotes and the commentary here, is marital relations. What does that mean that the Persians, the Iranians, are modest when it comes to marital relations? It means, when it comes to sex, it means that the Persians would remain clothed when they engaged in marital relations. How interesting. So they would remain clothed. We're not supposed to remain clothed according to Jewish law when we're having sexual relations. That's why the myth of the hole in the sheet is certainly a myth. But although Rabbi Gamliel says here that he liked the Persian modesty in this matter, the Bryce in the Gemara says that the Jews should not do this. This is something that the Jews should not do. One person that we see, one famous Iranian that we see was engaging in sexual relations in a modest manner was Achashverosh, the king of the Purim story. He was the king of Persia and Media, Paras Umadai. He was the king. And remember how he had that beauty pageant and he had all those women come and he had to check him out to find out who was the worthy wife. You know how we check them out. This is a bit of a euphemism. We don't mention it in the Purim story in front of the kids. But he slept with every one of these women. He slept with every single one of these women who, after 6 months of preparation with fragrances and perfumes and another 6 months of some other kind of preparation, they spent 12 months preparing for one time with the king, one sleep, one marital encounter with the king. And after that, they were sent then to the archive, to the king's archive, to the house of the concubines, where they would stay there forever, not allowed, never being allowed to marry anyone else. Unless the king wanted them to come back to him, then they were going to be with him. But otherwise, they were stuck there in the archive, like your email archive, which never gets opened ever. That's where these poor women were sent to. So, and Esther obviously was one of them. She was chosen as the queen. God knows what happened that night. I don't know. But I guess you could use your imagination. But when Achashverosh slept with all these women, when did he do this? It was considered in his merit that he did so only at night. He would save one woman per night. So it took a long time to find a new queen because he only did it one a night. Instead of doing it, every few hours, he did it one per night. Although Rabbi Gamliel says here that he liked the Persian modesty in the matter of sex, the Bryce and the Gemara there says that the Jews should not do this. Also, the Gemara in Megillah says that for all of his wickedness, Achashverosh, the Persian king, had one commendable trait, that he would engage in relations only at night, but not during the day. You're not really technically supposed to engage in relations during the daytime. If you do, you should close the curtains, obviously. Let's go a little further over here. The Gemara states another point with regard to the Persians. The Iranians, the verse says, I've commended my prepared ones. This is a verse in Isaiah. Rav Yosef taught in a brisa, who are the prepared ones? This refers to the Persians who are called prepared ones because they are prepared and ready for purgatory. They're ready to go to hell. How interesting. The Isaiah says the Persians are ready to go to hell. Why is that? The passage discusses the downfall of Babylonia. Remember, the Persians and the Medes conquered Babylonia. The end of the Babylonian Empire was when the Persians and the Medes took it over. They conquered them. And says that God had commanded Parasim, Madai, Persians and Medes to destroy it. According to the verse's plain meaning, they are called my prepared ones because God prepared them to be his agents to destroy Babylonia. The Gemara, however, states that they are so named because they are prepared and destined for purgatory. Even though the Persians were wicked and bound for purgatory, the Gemara does not refrain from praising them for the good qualities of modesty in certain matters. So basically, here's the takeaway, guys. There's three things that we are commendable about the Persians. Number one, it's all about their modesty. The modesty in how they eat, the modesty in how they go to the bathroom, in their sanitary toilets. Number three, the modesty in their sexual relations. Apparently they do so clothed, which is not something which we're supposed to be learning from. The third one we're not supposed to learn from. Even though technically speaking, by the way, there's a lot of misconception about sex and Jewish law. A lot of misconception. It's from the Hole in the Sheet and many, many, many others. Even though there are some places that say you shouldn't have sex in the daytime or you shouldn't have sex while clothed, it's okay. If you do it, it's not like the end of the world. It's not a big deal. But the takeaway here is that the Iranians are going to hell. They're going to purgatory. It doesn't say why, though. I'm trying to think why the Iranians are going to purgatory. Maybe they were just wicked ones. I mean, look, we see what's going on today with Iran and how they're just hell-bent on destroying the people of Israel. It's almost like from where does this hatred originate? They have such tremendous hatred, like financing other countries and financing terrorists. And when they hear about a terrorist in Israel, then they support his family and they buy him a house or something because they want to finance terrorism and reward terrorism. I guess today we kind of understand why the Iranians are destined to go to hell. But in any event, we have learned today three things about both the Medes and the Iranians. Any questions before we wrap it up, friends? Any questions before we call it a day here? I do want to mention to you, though, that today is Wednesday, and tonight at 5 o'clock, we're having the first drive-through sukkah. First drive-through sukkah. So join us today. The media should be here as well. The Medes, not the Medes, but the media should be here as well. Join us today at 5 o'clock for the drive-through sukkah experience where you can do all the mitzvahs of sukkahs in a safe way. Bless the lulav and the etrog. Make the blessing of Shechianu on the lulav and the etrog. You can eat in the sukkah whilst in the safety of your own car. You can make a blessing on wine, a blessing on lox. I think it's lox, maybe it's meat, I don't know. And also a blessing on the sukkah. That's 5 blessings you can do from the safety of your car. It can take you 5 minutes. Just drive through 5 blessings, 5 minutes, and you've done tremendous mitzvahs. And it's the first time ever that we're having a drive-through sukkah. So join us today at 5 o'clock. It's you can just reserve your spot for social distancing at jewishgardens.com/RSVP. That's jewishgardens.com/RSVP to reserve your spots. You don't have to wait too long in the line. And that's happening today at 5 o'clock. So we hope to join. You'll join us there. Andy says the mullah's Iran is not like the Shah's Iran. I'm talking about today's Iran. I'm not sure about which Iran you're talking about, but today's Iran, I guess the Shah's Iran was better Iran. They got along with Israel real nice. But today's Iran, who knows? Maybe it's a prophecy about the future, but it says they're destined for purgatory, as if it's a reference, Andy, to some distant future thing, right? They're prepared ones, like in advance. They were destined to go to purgatory, and maybe in line with other prophecies which I've shared with you in the past from the Torah, which speak about a great war between Iran and the West regarding Israel. Maybe that could be the war before Mashiach's coming, or maybe what we're going through right now, this Cold War, is this war between is the war involving Iran, and maybe that somehow is a preparation for the coming of Mashiach, and it's the Iranians that were prepared to be the combatants to make life difficult for the Jews before the coming of Mashiach, and maybe that's why they're destined to go to purgatory. Who knows? In any event, lots to think about. Sarai Adi on YouTube says, agreed with Torah. Thank you. I'm glad to hear that you're with me. Wonderful. And today is Sukkot. So everybody have a happy Sukkot, have a safe Sukkot. And we hope that you'll join us. Spread the word, by the way, even if you're not in town, even if you're in Chicago or something, spread the message. Send the email, please, about the Sukkah event, the drive-through Sukkah, to your friends in Mirassol and Ballon Isles and Frenchman's, wherever they are here in Palm Beach Gardens. Spread the message. Let your friends experience sukkahs, which is meaningful, which is kosher, which is spiritual, and bring the home for God in this world. Make for Hashem a home in this world, as we've learned in Tanya. We do this through the unique mitzvahs of the time. And he says they must be really committed to the nuclear destruction of Israel. Yeah, they seem to be. In any event, have a good day, everybody. Shalom. Thank you for joining me here today. Don't forget, tomorrow morning we'll be doing a Simchas Torah crash course, the fourth final of our High Holiday Crash Course series. We did a crash course Rosh Hashanah, crash course Yom Kippur and Sukkot, and now we're doing crash course Simchas Torah. That's happening tomorrow morning at 8:30 on Zoom and on Facebook. Please join me for our 1 hour crash course on Simchas Torah and Shmini Atzeres, how to do this at home, how to make it more meaningful, and I hope to see you there. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a great day. Shalom, and thank you for joining me this morning. It's always a pleasure, and I appreciate your studying with me.